What's up? What's up? Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark here, Gamecock Central YouTube, and a little something different today. A little practice quick hitter as South Carolina completed their 15th practice of the preseason today, and I would say actually some news coming out of practice. First and foremost, Steve Fink, who's done a great job, South Carolina's media relations guy, tweeted out this morning, as he does for every practice. But this time we saw middle linebacker Ernest Jones rocking the yellow jersey, but back on the field, had to deal with appendicitis, had surgery to get that handled, and now is back on the field. And I think, Chris, it had to be – we weren't there. Obviously, nobody's really there. But knowing what we know about Ernest Jones, I bet there was a little added energy on the South Carolina practice fields today just because we've seen this kid. You love when you see a guy make progress, right? We've seen this kid steadily from playing sparingly as a freshman to playing a bunch last year to now sort of, I would say, Chris, taking complete ownership of what this defense is this offseason. So I know the guys had to be happy to have Ernest back out there.
For sure, and he's been one of their leaders. I mean, and you're exactly right, man. I mean, from the moment that he stepped on campus, he was a guy that really caught the coaching staff's eye because – he moved well. He was really smart. He's just got a really high football IQ, and then physically he's got some tools as well. And so even though, like you said, it was sparingly as a freshman, there were obviously some guys ahead of him. He, was able to see some early playing time, and he's really just progressed to where I remember not too far in the past, Ernest did a media availability and was asked, whose defense is this? He said, it's my defense. So he's really taken ownership of it, like you alluded to. He's a guy that's a leader of this team, not only from a production standpoint, but also in just being a vocal guy, being able to get everybody organized. It certainly helped, a guy like Damani Staley, for example, to get some extra reps in his absence. But Ernest is going to be able to step right in, sort of take that spot back, and he knows exactly what to do and will be a huge boost to get him back, with enough practice time to start getting ready for Tennessee.
Yeah, and super sharp guy. I mean, I think we all knew that. You drove down there and covered his announcement when he committed to South Carolina. Duke was heavily involved, and I think the academic side of things with potentially going to Duke was very appealing to Ernest. So he's always been a really sharp, smart kid. Missed time probably affects anybody, but the fact that you do have still – 2.5 weeks, exactly 2.5 weeks left to get back. There's maybe a little bit of conditioning that you want to get knocked out, getting back into it. But if there's anybody, I would say he's probably one of your top 5 guys on the team that could miss time and then just be right back out there and be fine. And it's not like it's game week yet. It's not like, South Carolina's kicking off this Saturday. So, I think, and to your point, we've talked a ton this preseason about how much depth is going to be a factor. The linebacker position, not one that necessarily has a ton of proven options behind, your projected starters. So I do think, as you mentioned, Damani Staley getting a bunch of reps, Sherrod Green getting to rep in there at Will and Mike. Again, we talk about it with every position with this staff. It's not necessarily about who's the backup at your direct position. It's about, what gets the best guys on the field. If Mo Kaba keeps pushing, I think this probably gave him some extra reps. If somebody has to miss some time, maybe there's an option. Maybe Sherrod Green slides over to the mic at times if you have to. So I think the extra practice time that has been built in because the season being pushed back, plus Ernest not being out there, has to have been big for some of these other guys. And, you hear Muschamp talking about Damani doing some things that weren't necessarily comfortable to him before, having to be a vocal guy, having to, relay the plays. All those things are long-term positives, I think, for that linebacking core.
No doubt. I mean, anytime it's sort of a deal where it's a blessing in disguise if a guy does happen to go down, or even, we see a lot of situations, some of the top guys, whether on offense or defense, maybe every now and then they'll sit a scrimmage or whatever it may be, just to rest them, just to get some younger guys some reps. And so obviously you want to have Ernest out there because he's still got room to improve, obviously, going into this junior season. He's one of the better players on that defense, but he could take a step forward too, I'm sure. And so you'd love to have him out there. You'd love to have him out there in practice, sort of quarterbacking, for lack of a better term, the defense as well. But while he's not, that gives these other guys a chance. And, what you said about Damani, you're the Mike linebacker. You're responsible for getting everybody lined up, making calls. You got to be a vocal guy. And so if you're playing Mike, whether or not you like it or whether or not you're comfortable with it, that's what you're doing. And so I think with Ernest, it comes naturally to him because he is a sharp guy, like you said, but also I think he's comfortable being vocal as well. So really good to have him back. Some of the younger guys, I think, gave them an opportunity to, come along as well. Unfortunately for Rosendo Lewis, he wasn't out there, won't be back for a little while longer, but he'll have an opportunity to get back in there too. But getting Ernest back certainly big. And the hope for this coaching staff on defense is that some of those younger guys are also able to get better, in the interim.
So as we're recording this here on Wednesday, practice has wrapped up. They practice in the mornings, and South Carolina has sent out their little daily video interviews that they do. And we today, I'm glad we've been able to hear from some of the assistant coaches. So again, appreciate Steve Fink hooking us up with those. Today we hear from Mike Peterson, who is, of course, South Carolina's basically edge guys, defensive ends, Bucks, still involved, I guess, a bit with the Sams at times. But so your Jordan Burches, Aaron Sterlings, JJ Enigbare, those guys. And Mike P talked today a bit about Jordan Burch, and he talked about other guys as well, of course. Continue to echo what we've heard on JJ Enigbare, who's had a really good camp at that Buck position from everything we've heard. But I thought it was most interesting, and fans want to hear about Jordan Burch. He's the 5-star guy. So here is Mike Peterson talking glowingly about Jordan Burch and what he's sort of brought to this team already.
I know one thing: when he hop off the bus, he's gonna be a pretty ball player. He looks good, man. But he has it all. He's fast. He's strong. The thing I probably like the most about him is he's really coachable. I can get on him. A lot of times, those highly recruited guys, they come in and haven't been coached in high school, or they haven't been, the coach haven't really got on him. I'm able to get on him just like I can get on the rest of the guys, and he accepted. He excelled when I get on him a little more. So I'm thrilled about him. He's out there running around. Right now my job is to shorten the learning curve for him and get him ready to play on Saturday and help us.
Yeah, so Chris, I think if you're a Carolina fan and you're hearing that, right, like that makes you feel really good. And there is always, and I'm not talking about Jordan specifically, but when you do have a guy who's sort of extremely highly recruited, comes in and has been told how good of a player he is. I mean, we talked about Jordan Burch's final 5. It was South Carolina and then 4 of the absolute premier current programs in the country, right? And now, luckily for South Carolina, we've heard, from people around there at Hammond, hey, this kid works. Like he wants to be better. He works his tail off and pushed himself even at the high school level. But to hear Mike Peterson talk about Jordan, we all know the physical aspects that he brings to the table, the speed, the athleticism, the size, the strength, etc. It's all there for an edge college player, right? But to hear him say, hey, I can get on this kid, and it motivates him. He takes coaching well. I would say it sort of confirms what we probably thought was the case, but absolutely has to be a good sign. Generally, a coach is never going to most of the time, they're not going to throw their young guy under the bus. But if he had said something like, he's still working through some things, or he needs to get more consistent, then that would sort of be a positive way of saying he's not quite there yet. The way he sort of went out of his way to talk about how coachable the kid is, I think is an excellent sign for South Carolina. And I think Burch is probably your next guy in line at that Buck position, I would think. And then, depending on down distance scenario, I'm thinking, Chris, you're getting this guy on the field, particularly in some 3rd and long situations, maybe.
It certainly sounds like if it's not there, that it could get there. I mean, based on what Peterson said, he said, hey, look, sort of the tools are there. It's my job to get him there as a coach to where he can come in and help us on game day. And so you're right. I mean, I think you hit on all the main points there, and that we knew anybody could take a look at this kid, take a look at a 6'5", 250, 260 pounder out there playing receiver in high school, running past people, even in Skeeza, and you say, all right, the athleticism is clearly there. And so then from there, it's about, continuing to learn the position, learning how to play, adjusting to the speed of the game, adjusting to the size that you face on that level. And that's for any high school player. But the key components of being a good edge rusher in college, I mean, you got to have the physical traits, but you also got to have the smarts, the know-how, the IQ, and the want to be coached. And we expected him to check those boxes, but he certainly has. It sounds like he hasn't hit any type of wall with that. Every freshman's going to have some struggles with picking things up or just not having a great day here and there. But we've consistently heard pretty good things about him, since he's been on campus. The athleticism wasn't in question. But yeah, it's good news for South Carolina to hear Peterson confirm that. And he's not scared to say, even in a media setting, if he's pushing guys or where guys are at, or sort of give an honest assessment of things. And so I thought that was encouraging for South Carolina's defense, and definitely not a guy, we hear this term de-recruiting a guy when he gets on campus. Big time guys who were shown a lot of love in high school, and sometimes they have to sort of come back down to earth a little bit. And didn't really think that would be the case with Jordan, because of the way he handled his recruitment. But just more confirmation today that he's just been, a regular member of the team and a guy that they pushed, and he's responded well to that.
Yeah, so let's shoot on over to Bobby Bentley, tight ends coach, obviously, that spoke today as well. And I would say continued confirmation of some things that we thought it was kind of heading this way prior. I think you combine the fact we all knew Nick Muse was going to have to be the guy. They've had him on a pitch count a little bit, making sure, I'm sure the knee still gets sore at times. I think Nick a couple of weeks ago said, what did he say, 95%, maybe something like that. But he said my 95 is like other people's 100. So I don't think he's too concerned about the knee. So we know number 9 is going to be the starter at tight end, but there was some question about who's next in line. And I think you've had two guys that have two very different skill sets, which is a good thing for South Carolina, take a step forward. And I think, first of all, one of them being someone we mentioned this preseason to watch, as having taken a step forward, and one we didn't mention, the first being Will Register, who, as you and I have talked about, Chris, fits this scheme. I think a bit more some of the things. We even talked about it in recruiting, needing that tight end who can set the edge, who can play that inline role within Mike Bobo's scheme that we saw, some really talented tight ends going all the way back to his days at Georgia, So I think you look, and Will Register, from what Bobby Bentley said, has just gotten comfortable. He's taken on a little bit more of a leadership role. He knows his assignments very well. And again, it's nice to see a kid who sort of sticks it out, doesn't transfer, waits his time, and now is going to get to, it seems like, and I'll get to sort of how I think it's going to fit in, but it seems like Will Register is going to see the field this year, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a case where, like you said, guy waits around, waits his turn, sticks it out, and, sometimes it's just a change in circumstances for a guy. Sometimes it's just timing, or time. We talk a lot, and we talked about this in one of our recent live shows, man, that, a guy's career isn't over until it's over, in terms of the length of his career, when it's 4 or 5 or even 6 years, or maybe for Adam Prentice 7, until those times are up, and so a lot of times if a guy is a freshman has not contributed, well, maybe he's a bust, or sophomore, definitely as a junior, and especially when you look at a guy like Will Register, where he was ranked by Rivals.com as a 4-star guy, had some good offers, and so a lot of people looked at it and said, well, this guy should be contributing this and that. Sometimes it just takes a little time. Sometimes it takes a change in circumstances. Sometimes it's both, and I think for him, that's what it's been. He does fit this scheme well. Is he going to be a guy that you're going to, flex out in the slot a ton and go have him win one-on-ones against, linebackers or slot corners? No, he's not. But he's got a guy that's got size. He can keep a defense honest enough to go catch some passes. He can do some of the play action stuff that Mike Bobo's going to have. And in an offense where they've done everything from 1 tight end to even 4, like Mike Bobo said, he fits in better. And so that, combined with the fact that he's had a pretty good offseason, sounds like from all the returns that he's had, the best offseason that he's had since he's been in Columbia, those things really add up to where he's going to have a chance to make his biggest contribution yet.
Yeah, and got to be happy for him, man. A local kid, obviously has worked hard and stuck it out. So the other guy being Kivion Mullins, and someone that moved over from the receiver position, someone that's always been sort of, I mean, we talked about, is he possibly a linebacker, when he was being recruited, because he was listed as a 4-star athlete by Rivals. I remember seeing him at the 5-star challenge, there in Atlanta when he committed to South Carolina. And so Kivion comes in, he's a receiver, right? And then didn't really play at all last year. And I think there was even, there was question because, South Carolina had so many injuries at receiver and they needed guys to step up. And, Chris, I think there were times when, even considering those scenarios, Kivion wasn't dressing out. And so I think there was some question from the fans. Again, you asked those questions a little too early, I think, a lot of times in our current state of college football. And maybe he was banged up. Maybe there were other reasons that we weren't privy to. But he comes back, slides over to tight end, basically accepted that role immediately. And, dude, Bobby Bentley said they have this catapult system that Kivion straight line speed hits 21 miles per hour on the catapult, which means he's actually straight line one of the fastest guys on the entire team. So you have someone, he weighs about 230 pounds. He has bought into this tight end move. Bobby Bentley called him the professor because he has dialed into learning all the little intricacies of who's supposed to be where at the various positions on offense. And so, I think Kivion is a good kid, funny kid, and I'm excited for him as well to sort of buy into this, because I think you kind of have what I alluded to earlier is Muse is the guy, but add that in with Bobo talking about how, you're never going to try to ask a kid to do something that doesn't fit his skill set. I think there are certain things, there will be certain times where Will Register is the next guy in line, I think, at tight end. Then there will be other scenarios, situations, plays where maybe Kivion Mullins is your next in line. And I think one can sort of do a little bit more in the blocking area, I imagine, and the other, certainly Kivion Mullins provides some real mismatches when he's matched up with linebackers and man coverage, and they're having to carry him, down the field vertically. That means a safety a lot of times is going to have to get involved and stay in the middle of the field. Maybe that opens up some other things for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kid that out of high school was, thought of as a receiver, or some schools even thought running back, some schools thought safety, linebacker. So he had the athleticism to play a lot of different spots. And so, again, another situation in which, it just takes some time in general for certain guys, and then a change in circumstances. And so this looks like this move has taken well. It's taken maybe better than receiver did. He's put on some good weight. He's still going to have, a ways to go in terms of learning a new scheme, number one, and then just adjusting to the physicality of tight end, where you're being asked to, help on a defensive end, or you're going to be asked to go, help block defensive lineman or a linebacker. I mean, there's a lot of things that play into it in addition to just all the passing concepts. And so the good news for him and for South Carolina is that he appears to, as Bobby Bentley alluded to, he's really taken well to that. He's worked hard on that. And so that's important for this team, to have a couple guys in Register and in Mullins that maybe you weren't banking on as much this year, to maybe take a step forward and work their way. And they've certainly created a lot of buzz. So for Mullins, again, like you said, different style than Register, going to be more of a threat in the passing game because of that receiver ability. Going to have more work to do in the blocking department because of the size and because of just the technical know-how of what to do and how to do it there. But someone that can maybe give them a little bit in the passing game, which could be a boost for a team that needs more options there.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about it all offseason. They need playmakers, so we'll see if these guys can help out in that role. All right, so I think that's going to do it. if you're watching us here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, then hit the little bell notification there. And of course, come check us out, GamecockCentral.com. Use code Gamecocks to get 50% off. GamecockCentral.com, your first year of an annual subscription if you are a new subscriber. So for Chris, I'm Wes. We will see you and talk to you all very soon.